Hi y'all, and welcome to Music 104 Online, Week 9 tutorial for the 4/6 chord, the first in a series of tutorials that we'll be going through at least April 6th, but possibly longer. Today we're going to continue our discussion of secondary substitutions, so those are chords that substitute for other chords that we've already seen in the course. So today we're going to talk about the 4/6 chord and what it might substitute for. In order to figure this out, we can look for a few clues. So let's ask ourselves, what other inversion do we know that acts as a substitute chord? So there's obviously 1/6 substituting for 1, but those aren't two different chords. It's just an inversion of the same one. So an example of two chords that are different but that nevertheless substitute for each other would be, for instance, 2, 6, and 4. And we've looked at those before. So there we have a nice clarinet choir rendition of that particular chord where you can see the 5/6 is where we have the 4 and then the 2/6 chord. If I put them side by each, you can see that they share a lot of commonalities of structure. So what general heuristic or rule can we draw out of this? The first would be that they have the bass note in common, in this case scale degree 4. And the next thing to look at would be that they have the third above the bass in common. So the only moving pitch is the top pitch, making the 5/6 in the left-hand example. So let's put this together. How might this apply to 4/6? So if we start with our 4/6 chord, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write the bass that's being held over. So bass note in common, going along with our rule. Next, we're going to put our 4/6 again, and we're going to put the third above the bass that is also in common. So now, still in A minor, we're applying this to a 4/6 chord. And finally, we know that that if one is a first inversion chord, the other chord is going to be a root position chord because 2, 6, and 4. 2, 6 is the first inversion chord, 4 is the root position. So here we have a root position chord on the next chord after 4/6, and that gives us the 6 chord. So 4/6 substitutes for 6 because it has pretty much exactly the same kind of relationship to 6 that 2/6 has to 4. So in other words, they share two common tones, one of which is the bass, one of which is the third above the bass. When you have that, remember we talked about how that makes chords extraordinarily similar. Well, so is the case here, and we just have one moving voice above. So if 4/6 can substitute for 6, it pretty much means that 4/6 will work wherever 6 does. So for example, if we have the progression a simple downward arpeggio from 1 through 6 to the predominant and then the dominant, we can substitute the 6 with 4. I'm sure you can agree that neither of those are terribly different. Here's another example. So in this example, we took exactly the same chords from the first example, except we stuck our little 1/6 in there, in between the 6 and the 2/6. So 1, 6, 1, 6, and we can do exactly the same thing by substituting 4/6 for the 6. So here we go. Finally, we have deceptive progressions. So these are progressions where we move towards 5, but then instead of going back to 1, we go to 6. which causes us then to wrap back around to 5 before we ultimately come back to 1, because as you'll recall, a deceptive progression never just ends there, right? So let's give a listen to a deceptive progression with 6 in it. And now that same progression, but instead of the 6, the 4/6. I just realized I made a mistake there. You'll see that I put 6 in the final example. That should read 4/6 under that little deceptive bracket. That's my bad, but I don't want to go to the beginning of this and start recording again. So on we go. Next is to introduce you to a new idiom, which is the half cadence. So here we have 1, 4, 6 moving to 5. And you'll notice that the move happens over a 5 to 6 motion, scale degree 5 to 6 motion in the bass, right? Where that F is moving down to the E, illustrated by the blue line. Now, if we extract that F to E, that move is part of the Phrygian mode, right? The mode that goes from E to E on the white notes of the piano. Phrygian mode is a very, very old mode that dates back to the medieval period. And Renaissance theorists, when they got to the notion of cadences, decided that in the Phrygian mode, the cadence would be 2 to 1. It was that case in most of the modes at the time. So the cadence was 2 to 1, but in this case, we have a semitone moving F to E. So that gives it a particular flavor. So because of that, we tend to call this cadence, even though it's not in the Phrygian mode, we call it a Phrygian cadence because it recalls the Phrygian mode with that 5 to 6 motion in the bass. Very frequently, this is set up by a passing motion down to the 4/6, so that is down to scale degree 6, through natural scale degree 7, which is usually harmonized with a minor 5 in first inversion, as you can see in the example on the right on your screen. Let's give that a listen to. That's a very classic chord progression that goes all the way back to Monteverdi at least, who used it in a number of settings where he was setting lament texts. And so this became known as the lament bass, where you went 1, natural 7, natural 6, 5, usually harmonized like I've done here. So this is a long, long history, and eventually ends up being When I'm Laid in Earth and Dido and Aeneas, and even In My Way by Sinatra. Okay, so that's the end of the lesson for today. So just looking forward down the week, we've got some upcoming submissions. We've got week 9 singing activity videos that you are to upload on Blackboard, and that needs to be done by class time, the beginning of class time, that is, on Monday, March 23rd. And your week 9 transcription homeworks. Remember that if there are two numbers on the homework, you're only responsible for one. So we're going to lighten the load a little bit. That's also due uploaded on the Blackboard site by Monday, March 23rd, and as just a friendly reminder, you can do those by hand and then use a PDF making app to make a PDF. You can do it either on the sheets that I provide if you have access to a printer. If you don't, you can do it on free staff paper, or if that you may have lying around, or finally you may also do it on notation software. Noteflight, for instance, is free, and you can get that online. It's a website, and you can submit it as a PDF from a notation software. That's it for us today. So here are the credits. A lot of people working on this. Most of them were me. One of them was my cat. I hope you all have a good week. Stay safe, stay clean, and stay sane. Ciao.